인생에는 다시 오지 않을 순간이 있습니다. 지금이 가기 전에 EOS 700D 캐논.
You know, I'm going to go right into the pictures. I want you to really understand why I take pictures, you know, why I'm a photographer, but also why I'm a woman. And I think I'm number one, a woman. Number two, a photographer. People are so afraid of sex, you know? And the problem with this is that by people being afraid to see what sex is, to understand what sex is, then that keeps women down all the time. Because then we women, we don't really know what sex is unless a man that we somehow trust, somehow love, he teaches us what he likes. That's not my way. As a woman, I want to know sex my way. But as a young photographer, to see things that I was interested in, I needed to go into the clubs, into the dark places. Not because I wanted to have sex with everybody in there. It's because I'm a voyeur. I want to see what people are all about. And when you see them in a sexual way, you start to understand what are their hungers, what are their desires, what are their fears. You start to see them beyond the superficial appearance that we all present to each other on a daily basis, minute by minute. Many of my pictures tell stories. And some of them, the stories you can tell just by looking at the picture. It's not so complicated. But this picture, which is called Eve Finding Her G-Spot, is an incredible story that I'm going to share with you now. Well, so one day when I was at the orgies, I met this woman named Eve who had come from Germany during the World War II. She had lost most of her family in concentration camps. She came here as a young girl. She came to New York City as a young girl. And she found a husband, very good man, and they had a good life together. They had children, but she wanted more. She wanted many men. She had a huge appetite for men and for sex. But all the times, you know, she'd had maybe 2,500 men in her life, she had never found her G-spot. These are just pictures from different sex places, sex parties, sex clubs that I've been to over the last 30 years. As long as I've been photographing domestic violence, I've been photographing sex. And even when I'm photographing just everyday life like this, you know, I start to see where our sexuality comes from in a very healthy way. You know, this is all, you know, you can't deny that we are sexual beings from the day we are born. We come from sex. We go through life in a sexual way. What's important is not to corrupt that. What's important is to protect the children and protect ourselves from being used. Okay, this is an interesting picture here. The symbol of this is that, you know, the black man is sucking on the white heel. The white heel represents the white man's cock. In 1999, I was reading in the paper in the New York Post, about this thing that was going to be happening in New York City in a building, a warehouse downtown. That was quite a futuristic idea, where 60 people would be chosen to live in this newly fabricated motel called the Pod Hotel. And 60 people would be chosen for a human mind control experience. Now, if you were chosen to be in this place, then you had to live in this pod. Each of the people would have a sleeping room, which would be metal pods where we would all sleep alone. We had our own rooms, but we were hooked up to TVs. And we could watch each other in the pods. We could watch all kinds of crazy science fiction movies, even porn. We would sleep, eat, do everything in public, and we would be filmed at all times, and they controlled us. We could never leave. So this was a thing that was happening in the last month of the last century, the 20th century, before we went into the new millennium. But to get into it, you had to be interviewed in a room, like an isolation room, and they had the camera. I mean, not everybody could do it, you know. They wanted to know who we were, and they wanted to know how much we could take. So it was really like a camp, a concentration camp experience. On the last night, when the clock struck 12, everybody was doing ecstasy, right? I wasn't doing ecstasy because I was the only photographer in there. And that's why I wanted to be there. I wanted to be able to photograph anybody I wanted at any time without ever asking anything, without knowing their names. I just wanted to be able to take pictures. Shelters. I'm the only photographer in the world who has ever been granted permission to photograph in shelters, to live there like the women do, and to photograph. And the way that I got that permission was by talking to every single woman that was in a shelter. You know, I have to get their permission. To get access into the first shelter, I had to write over 100 letters to finally get permission.